everybody, it is Cinnamon Cooney, your art Sherpa, and today I am really thrilled and excited to be showing you how to paint this blue door. This is one of the most requested lessons that I've had in a long time, and I'm always so happy to give you guys stuff that you ask me for. That's actually what that comment section is before. I always look through it. If you guys make a lot of suggestions, they become paintings. When I did this big art quest, you guys were like, can you show us how to paint the door? So check out the description below. It's going to have the materials, information. Be sure and look at the iCard because there's a couple really important links. One to the Big Art Quest, where we talk about the Stucco technique in depth and show you a spring finale. And remember, there's a part 2 to this. So if you really need to plant your garden, we've got fall for you. So it's everything I promised you coming up. Get your paint, get your brushes, get your stucco, get your palette knife. Go ahead if you're feeling optimistic and give me a like and a subscribe. But if not, you can wait till the middle of the video. I just can promise you it's going to be awesome. And let's get started. I'm excited to get to share this with you today. The first thing that I want to show you is how you can sketch in the door and the window. Of course, as usual, I have a traceable that you can find on TheArtSherpa.com because I don't think drawing is the only definition of being an artist. It's an art skill among many great art skills. So if you're not a person who's comfortable with drawing, but you do enjoy painting, that's okay. It's not cheating. But if you're working on your art journey and you're working on your drawing journey, I'm going to show you how I sketched this in. Now I'm using some simple tools that you can get very, very easily. I've got an inexpensive T-square. I have my 16 by 20 canvas. I have a chalk pencil. This is a fine art pastel pencil in blue-gray. I chose this color so you could see it on camera, but I would wholly recommend that you think about doing maybe like a burnt sienna or a brown on yours. And I also have an inexpensive ruler because my particular T-square didn't really cover the entire canvas. Now my door here, if I'm to measure it, is 8 inches wide and starts just a little bit past, just a hair. I mean, you could do it dead in the middle of your canvas. See, there's the middle. It's just a little bit off center on the middle. Right? So the whole thing is 8 inches. The inside is about 7.5. So the first thing I did was on that inside width, I created 2 vertical lines. The idea of these vertical lines is that the T-square makes sure that they are vertical and they don't wander to the side a little bit. That is important whenever you're doing architectural drawing. Right? I'm going to use my longer ruler to make those nice and elongated. And just the idea of this is that I don't really freehand a perfect straight line. At the top of the line, about 1.5 inches from the bottom, I make a little mark from the top of this, and I'm just going to have a nice little curve. This door has a rounded top, which definitely means that wherever this door is, in this place, in this village, there's a craftsman that makes this. About a 1/2 inch wide. I'm going to make another mark, and I'm going to make a parallel line curved at the top of my door. I try to keep it as even of a width as possible, but the wonderful thing about this being rustic and having character is that it's entirely possible that the hand-hewn, stucco and stone will not be totally perfect. You can just say that that was your intention for your rustic door if you want to. You can hopefully see that line right there. I'm going to make a line at the bottom of my door. Try to make sure that's as level as I can. And if you're not sure of something being level, remember to use your T-square wherever you can to check it and make sure that it is, right? I'm going to make another line, and this line ended up being, my ruler has so much paint on it, about a 1/2 inch from the step, and it's going to be a little bit longer than the line above it. Just a smidge longer than the line above it. I haven't really drawn in a vanishing point. We'll talk about that in our big art quest. This one I'm doing by eye. And I'm going to connect the corner of this to right there, and the corner of this right there. Now we're going to have some straight up and down lines. And it's going to be a 1/2 inch again about, and another flat horizontal line. I did this first with my T-square. This step, because it's closer to me, the next line, the next distance out, will be longer. And it's a little, we'll look at how long it is. It's like 3/4 of an inch long. So longer than a 1/2 inch. And what I have to do often is flip my canvas upside down so that I have good angle. That's my trick. And I'm going to try to make this as level as I can. Again, you can use the T-square to check your level if you need to. I'm going to bring the corner of this and the edge of that together, and then another straight down line. And that's how I create the illusion of my steps. If I was trying to make steps vanishing to a point here, I would continue this, getting the steps closer and closer together until they vanished. Then, about 1 inch over, make a little line, and that is the side of your window. Using my ruler to kind of keep it straight up and down. Use your T-square if you need to. My next window line is 3.5 inches out, and the height of the window, just so you can know, is just over 4.5 inches. Now, since this is not a famous building, and something from my own head, I can have it be not exact, very specific things. The next line, though, for the window box, I want it to be longer on each side, and I have it almost a 1/2 inch out each side of the window, right? That seems a little long. And then my next line underneath is going to be pretty close to the width of my window, maybe a little bit longer. So I'm going to shave this in a little bit, because I think I went too far. But I do want my window, racing with my finger there, to be out. And that's all that's involved in sketching this in. So I have paint for acrylic painting here. This is a heavy-bodied professional grade of paint. It means it has a lot of pigment, and it also means that the paint doesn't soften or flatten as it dries. It's going to hold all of its brush stroke and texture. I have alizerine crimson, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, ultramarine blue, cad red medium hue. I have, and it's a mouthful, quinacridone, nickel, azo gold, cad yellow medium hue. I also have and this is funny, hooker's green. You could do a sap green here, titanium white. You can forego this color, but I actually recommend that you think about doing it because it's a really lovely color. I've got my cups for my water, and I'm going to be using brushes designed for acrylic paint. And the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to get a pretty mid-sized brush. This is a number 10 bright with a firm filament. And what that means is that it wouldn't be comfortable to, say, apply makeup to my face or, you know, to like put something on my skin, but it wouldn't like scratch off my skin. It wouldn't be abrasive. That's kind of that sweet spot for acrylic brushes when you're using heavy body paint. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to dip my brush in the water and drag my excess water off. And because this brush is designed for acrylic paint and heavy body paint, it's not going to hold an excessive amount of water, which is really helpful. And I'm going to actually just pull out my yellow ochre. And do this underpainting all around here with this as my base. I'm using the edge of the bristles to go around the edge here. And you'll notice that the pigment and the chalk is just blending into the paint. And that's why I like to use those types of sketching materials. If I used graphite, it would really bleed into the paint and bleed through the layers of the paint. But this is our underpainting. So we can put it in fairly quickly. This is about covering the white of the canvas with our first color. Acrylic painting is about layers. Ogres have layers, onions have layers, and acrylic paintings have layers. And I think what happens to people who are new to painting, like I'm dipping the brush in, I'm not really rinsing it out, I'm taking off the excess, and I'm coming back over and getting some more paint. This improves the flow of my paint off my brush. I think what happens to new painters is that they're in an early stage of the painting and it looks different than they were imagining and they give up. But in truth, that's the underpainting stage. That is, all acrylic paintings kind of have a crazy, ugly stage for all artists as you're layering up or conceiving your idea. And as you keep adding layers, they just get prettier and prettier and they reveal themselves. And I think that's one of the best things about them, actually. So that's a beautiful golden color. This piece is about warm colors and cool colors playing off of each other. And in art terms, we would say this is a full key painting. If you've ever heard that, I don't know if you have. Maybe you have heard that somewhere. And that means that I'm running a full value scale, full gray scale through the painting. Lights and darks, very robustly expressed. On top of that, I will be using cool values and warm values to create a sense of time and scape in this piece. Again, you can see it's just about 1/4 inch of the bristles in, dragging off, and pulling the paint out, loading it at the tip of my brush here. This painting might seem very intimidating to somebody new who hadn't been painting that long. But if you've done a few paintings and you've been succeeding at them, this might be a really good one to try because it just uses regular painting skills. In fact, I like to say this type of art is what all those painting skills are for. So we're just brushing this in. I'm pulling this out. Almost done painting the rest of this in. Didn't take that long. 16 by 20 canvases can seem like a big canvas, but they're actually not. Whoop, I went a little far with my paint. I'm going to wipe that back with my finger and not worry about it. Because the sketch was a guide. It's not an absolute reality. I just need to know where stuff goes. That's all I'm saying. Whew. Hope you're doing good at home. Having a good week. Hope you're taking care of yourself. And enjoying the beautiful weather where you are. Maybe the weather isn't beautiful and you were imagining it would be. Painting is great for that too. Just layering this all in. We're almost done with this part of the underpainting. All right. I'm going to wipe this off. Rinse out my brush a little bit, pulling out that extra paint. Make sure that lip is good. Drying that off. Put this to the side for a minute because I got to paint in my door and my window. And I'm going to get a slightly smaller brush. Always try to paint a brush not too small and fidgety. Sometimes when you're new to painting, you'll pick a very tiny brush. I will see new painters try to paint a whole painting with a brush this size. and they'll feel like, it was very exhausting. It took them a lot of time. Maybe they're happy with the result even, but they were like, wow, that was really intense. And what that is about is they were using too small of a brush for the project. You want to use the right size brush for the job. Something not too big so you can't, get around the corners, but not so small that it tightens you up in your shoulders and your neck. Because you want to relax through your shoulders and your neck. I am ready to put this in, and I think the right size for the job for the door is just a little bit down from what I'm painting. And we'll say try number 6. That feels good to me. I'm going to get my brush wet, drag this off. This number 6 bright right here. And I'm going to do an interesting thing. You'll notice I didn't put on any black because I'm going to use something in art we like to call chromatic black, which is that I mix colors together to create a deepening of that color. So I'm using this cad red into this ultramarine. It's graying the blue and it's making it very dark, and that's what I want for the underpainting of my door and my window. Come around on the inside. And I would say now that I'm doing this, this is even small for my door. Like this is a good size for my window maybe, but a little small for my door. So I'm going to rinse it out, put it aside. And how I knew it was a little bit too small is I could feel that I was going to have to do a lot of work covering that door. Imagine if you're painting a house and you had a really small edging brush only. You would know kind of right away, wouldn't you, that you had not got the right brush for the job as you were painting the wall. Well, this door is kind of like that. I'm dipping my brush in the water, bringing it over to the paint. And you can see that that is definitely going to take less time to paint that in. My paint right here is still blue. Still totally blue. It's just been grayed by the quinacridone red. I don't want the color of it to be red. I want it to stay blue. I just want it to be quite dark and not bright. Because this door is old. And to tell a story on my painting that the door is old, I have to create a sense of depth and robustness. Starting with this dark color allows me to do that. I might even, because my studio is quite dry and hot, put out, this is acrylic glazing liquid. I really like this. It slows down the drying time of my paint, so it saves me money actually in the long run and allows me to do glazes. And usually I had to buy 2 products to do those 2 different things. I had to buy one product for glazing and another product for slowing down the paint. But with this, I could use just one. And it's a little bit of an extender for me in that it makes my paint go further with less effort. Less paint. So pretty good stuff all the way around in my opinion. Mix that right in. I don't have to worry about the ratio. And I don't have to worry about the perfection of this brush stroke because I'm just doing the underpainting. First layer, and I know many, many layers are going to be happening here. Too much red in that particular mix. I brought over too much. So I'll just slow it down and mix my blue in. I'm okay because I'm going to need quite a lot of paint here. And if it got away from you and it was more red than blue, it wouldn't hurt this door, this project. Even a little bit. I was really excited at how many people were interested in seeing this demo as a lesson. Because this originally was part of a demo. Demos are different than lessons. Demos are something that artists can do for other artists or students to demonstrate a product or a technique or even a process, but they don't explain as much about maybe how the whole piece was built. They might focus on an idea or technique. Everybody liked the piece so much in the demo that it was really requested. See that? That's when I pressed in, it got a little red there. I don't know if you can see it on camera. I'm trying to really press this out of my brush, get this on my canvas. I'm going back and forth, scrubbing. This when I go like that with the brush, it's scrubbing, getting rid of those white spots, right? Scrubbing them in and brushing it out. So I've got the door in, and you can see the door is not looking for those white spots. When I get those sealed up on the canvas, you can see that that's not super fastidious or fussy. It's very loose, and the door will tighten up as we work it. In the window, I'm going to actually be, interestingly enough, a little more to the red in my mixture, because you'll notice when I am that it makes it more gray. I'm going to add a little white and then some glazing medium and come here to my window. This glass is going to be quite reflective. It isn't going to show a light inside the residence, so it's going to give us the sense that whoever lives here is not currently home. Pulling out some more of the blue, a little more of the red, and some white. In art, we're world builders, we're storytellers. And this painting is going to tell a story of a house that has been on this street a long time. Just coming along the edge here, using the edge of my bristles to sort of keep the shape of the window, coming on the tips, the edges to keep the shape of the window. This is we talked about this earlier, 3-hoot painting. And the thing to know when you're thinking of hoots, it's just a friendly way of saying that in the beginner stages of painting, I think that there's 3 stages. I have 1 hoot, which is just, you've never ever painted before. It's been such a long time, you barely remember how the brush works. That's a feeling that people have. Number 2 is you've been painting 2 hoots. You've been painting a little bit and it's been fun and you're feeling kind of confident. And number 3 is you put a bunch of paintings under your belt, which happens to new painters because it's so exciting to do it, right? It's so exciting to paint. And you're ready to be challenged a little bit. You're ready to take those skills that you've been learning and take those bigartquest skills and take those painting skills and apply them to something a little more robust. And this would be that. So if you want more information on those things, those other lessons, the bigartquest, you can always find those at TheArtSherpa.com. Deep breath time. Out. In. We hold our breath sometimes when we're painting. It is a very common thing that people do. I'm going to rinse out my brush a little bit. I'm going to come over here. And I've got this alizarin crimson. I'm going to take a little of my phthalo over to my alizarin crimson, making this dark color. And I'm going to lay in my window box a little bit. This box will be red. This is a number 6 bright, and so you see I moved down to that brush I thought was too small for the door, but you can see felt like a good size for this window box. Comfortable size for the brush stroke and the information I'm leaving here. Now you can also put down low tack tape, which is painter's tape here, if you need help with the lines. That was not so bad. All right, now we just have, for our underpainting, we have our arch and our steps. So let's start with our steps. Now, an interesting thing to think about when you're painting, especially if you're at the 3-hoot stage, is where is the light hitting the objects that exist on this very flat? Because this is a 2-dimensional surface, right? So where is the light hitting? And one of the places that the light would likely hit, if it's a normal past day, is on the tops of the steps, and we might see a shadow on the faces. Now, obviously, if we were looking at a reference, that would change a lot from morning to noon to night. So as artists, we have to make decisions about what time of day is it, and stick with those decisions throughout the painting, because you don't want it to be 2 o'clock here and 10 a.m. up here and 5 p.m. down here, because the painting will just seem odd. It won't quite read to our imaginations correctly. So try to make sure that you pick a lighting or a time of day that you can consistently create throughout your piece. I'm going to create my gray again. I haven't even rinsed out my brush. I'm going to take my cad red over to my ultramarine blue, and I'm going to pull some white into it like this. I'm going to paint the top of my step. Now, you might be fascinated by the fact that you are using red and blue and not remotely getting purple. And that's because of warm colors and cool colors. And one of the things that artists really need to understand is the color wheel, because unless it's a true red and a true blue, red and blue don't necessarily make what you think of as purple. But hopefully you're at the 3-hoot stage and you're quite familiar with 2 primaries, 6 total primaries, and having a lot of fun with your color theory. Color theory is fun. I'm just coming along the edge of my shape. And again, this is not about perfection. This is about completing all the steps and stages. I'm going to put that right there again. I'm going to even maybe be a little lighter. You know, another thing you could do is you could pull a little burnt sienna into this mix. Look at that. And it's just slightly different than the step above it. Just painting along. Painting it along. Filling that in, that nice light color up top. All right. Now I've got to put my shadows at the front of those steps. So I might pull out a little of my burnt sienna and my ultramarine. Yes, and my ultramarine. And you'll notice that I'm getting a very dark gray color. That's very rich and has a different value than the top of the step. Sometimes artists ask me how long a painting should take. And I don't think that there's a painting speed that artists adhere to. Certain works you should expect to take hours to do. They're not difficult. It's not like, you know, a double twist backflip. See, that's just difficult. It just requires some of your time. And I might work a little faster than you work, but that's because I have a lot of experience doing this, and I'm able to make quick, decisive actions in my painting, whereas you might be thinking about it a little bit as you go. that really isn't important. Let me get some of my glazing medium, because this is drying out on me, to the value of the work. I made a slightly darker color here. And really that was just that mix went that way, and I don't mind. It doesn't hurt the piece. It's not going to affect the layers. One thing I am going to want to do is for my posture, for my back, for my sanity, flip the canvas over. If you find that you're working in an uncomfortable angle or position, and sometimes when I'm teaching I'm guilty of this incredibly badly, is I don't flip the canvas to protect my back, my posture, and my health. And the point of painting, you know, is generally for most people is to have fun, enjoy themselves. Sometimes it's for health benefits. They've been asked to by a medical advisor in their life, or they've just decided that they have time for creativity or about increasing happiness. In all of those choices, happiness or medical, protecting your well-being in the creative process is very, very important. Taking care of yourself. No point in putting out your neck and back trying to feel better. So I always feel like you can turn the canvas and improve your painting experience. You matter. Okay. Now I'm going to paint the arch around. And I think what I'm going to really want to do is I'm going to pull out a little of my burnt sienna into my yellow oxide. I can even grab a titch of my ultramarine into this. It won't go green, but it will deepen this, which I want. And I'm going to just paint around the door with this darker value. Get a little of my burnt in here. Even a little of that. See, it makes a nice dark value. Grabbing my glazing medium. Get that painting time to slow down and it's drying. If you're painting in dry conditions, you may want to get some of that. That's what's happening to me. Dry conditions. I'm not too worried about this first coat. This is pretty transparent. And that is okay. This door is going to be a lot of layers, and I know that. So what's important is just getting started. Getting those first coats of paint on. I get asked a lot how I know what colors to start with. And what I'll say is that I've had a long time of observing different subject matter, and I'm often looking for cool and warm tones and a slight indication of an undervalue. I like to work often darker to light. So I know that this is going to be quite bright yellow, but it's going to have some richness to it underneath. And that's why I made the decision to take the yellow ochre and the burnt sienna. I'm pressing the paint out of my brush because it's starting to creep up into my ferrule. I'm going to wipe it out. You can see it's wiped out with my towel. Load a bead. Come back. Just make as nice of a line as I can. If I were painting very modern subject matter in a very representational way, I might be inclined to tape everything to get crisp lines, like you do in painting your house. if you've ever done that. But in this particular case, because it's rustic, I don't have to worry about that as much. I'm going to rinse out my brush. And the next fun thing that I can do is the next aging to my wall. Because I'm saying this building is old. I'm saying this building was built a long time ago, and it has a lot of character. It's seen a lot of history. And to do that, I have to actually kind of create a lot of imperfection, which is its beauty, it's its patina. And it's wonderful to have a variety of patina skills in your paintings, so when people look at them, they really feel the age and rusticness of your canvas. So the next stage I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a rougher brush. This is a natural bristle number 6 bright. I'm going to get it slightly wet, but not very wet. I'm going to pull out a little of my burnt sienna, maybe a little of my nickel Easel, some cad yellow, and a lot of my glazing. I'm going to very roughly pull this around my space. And I might even want to go a bigger brush. Now I'm looking at this. Bigger, rougher brush. Just so that I'm getting a nice effect. Pull out more of the nickel Easel. Maybe a little more of the yellow. So it's very bright. It's very warm. Because we're going to be playing a lot with warm and cool colors and how they play. If you notice, I'm roughing this wall up a lot. You can even get a little of your burnt sienna, a little of your ultramarine in there. Dusting them on the brush. Can you see how that's dusted? Pull that in. That. I don't want to take the warmth out. I've got to add bricks. I want this scrumble, this scrubbing on the canvas that I'm doing. And this glaze. And again, this is why I love this, because I couldn't do this with a retarder. I'd have to switch to a glaze, but I can do it with this one product. One and done. I'm going to grab a little of this color around. Now I'm just grabbing color around my palette. Just making sure that I'm putting a lot of character into my wall. Isn't that nice? So let's keep aging and patinaing our wall. It's sort of one of the fun parts of the project. I'm going to pull a little ochre out, a little of my nickel Easel, a little of my cad yellow, and even some burnt sienna with lots of glaze. Tons and tons of glaze. You can even grab a little of that ultramarine coming this side. And it's just that next layer that creates a sense of years of weathering. So the paint isn't new and it's not even, and to make that building feel old, you've got to add that aging into it. Very important. And you'll notice that I'm scrubbing and also changing the directionality of my brush a lot. That's a very helpful thing to do. I might pull some of this out. Maybe on this one you get a little of the ultramarine here. I don't want to take the warmth of it out. I just want it to be rustic. The next staging that I'm going to apply is sort of an interesting one. I'm going to take a little of my dark green. This is the hooker's green. You could be using the sap green. And I'm going to add it to my brown here. And also apply the glaze. And just here at the base of this wall, I'm going to, you can see me just sort of scrub. It's not painting it all in, right? A lot of everything that's underneath is showing, but this slight green implies that there's been water splashing back up from the street, hitting the wall, that the plants which we're going to be planting in part 2 are there. And when they've been watered, the shade and the water together is making that wall edge. I'm coming to this right side, and again I'm just adding a little of this. Paintings like this have lots of little subtle layers. They're not hard. You can scrub paint. You can dry brush something at this point probably. But you might not know how much work and layering goes into a piece like this. I'm going to rinse out my brush, scrape it off, wipe it off, and put it to the side for drying. And I'm going to start working some of the inside of my door. Now, I'm going to have to put ribbing in, but before I put ribbing in, I want to put another layer of patina in that door. And I'm going to pull my burnt sienna over to my ultramarine, pull my glaze. You can even get a little white. Look, this is just a little bit on the tip of your brush. And I'm going to start applying that next layer of paint. To the door. Grab a little white. Just up and down. You're just doing this now too. Just making sure that this has a little character and a little depth to it. I might even grab some of my nickel Easel and bring it over here. It's going to create a kind of glowing green, and apply that and age that. And here we go. You could have done burnt sienna again. The trick here will be that this door has been painted many times. Maybe by many owners, maybe by many generations of family. Adding a little white to that. I haven't rinsed my brush. I'm just starting to tell the story of my old door. Just starting to tell that story. Now, pretty soon, when I go to put the ribs in, I may actually pull in a little black. But that's because to create the aged metalwork and the deep shadows of the door, I've even seen people use paint pens. So if you have one of those, it's a good tool to have. It's a pen that actually has acrylic paint in it, interestingly enough. But you can see already this door is starting to have some character. I like to take a little of the alizerine crimson and the ultramarine, a little of my glaze, and come along this bottom edge. We'll actually be doing this several times. I'm going to pull a little bit of it up, just a little. Bottom of this. It's fun. Layer, layer, layer. Look at all the layers. Makes a difference. And absolutely at the top, pulling that down, coming under here, and pulling that down. All right. Let's start aging our window, putting a little reflection in the sky and giving that the depth of a window that was maybe installed 100 years ago, you know, that somebody has repainted or reglassed or looked out of, multi-generations have looked out of. So I'm going to want to really pull the shadow in. So one of the, interestingly, first kind of things I'm going to do is I'm going to take my ultramarine and my alizerine in this glaze. Let's start just pulling that down. They don't make an actual purple, but it creates a grayness to this. Then I'm going to take my burnt sienna into my ultramarine, even a little of my white over here, up and down, pulling this in. I'm going to make sure this is a number 6 bright. Scrub, you know, I'm using it. It's got a natural bristle and it scrubs quite well. Works my paint. You can use what you have. I tell you what I'm using so that if you're having a tool problem, you have the best chance of recognizing that really early. Got quite a lot more white over here. You can kind of see is happening. Letting it streak on the canvas, pulling it across. It's interesting to talk about my process when I'm painting it, because usually when you're painting something like this, you might not necessarily be doing that. I want a very dark reflection happening down here. Super dark. So I'm going to pull quite a lot of this over here. But I want it to be more blue coming up. And let's pull that up. We're going to add cross beams in a little while. Cross beams. A lot of vertical up and down reflection in that window, aren't we? Rinse out this brush a little bit. Might get a smaller brush for the window box. This is going to be an even smaller number 4 bright. Yay! All right, let's use this one. I'm going to switch to some cleaner water. And first, I'm going to pull out just even my alizarin crimson. I might even get some of my Easel gold into that. Pulling out the glaze. I'm going to start coming here and just saying, hey, little window box. You've been painted every season, every spring. Pull in a little of my cad yellow to that. Every spring. It's a little painting. Up here in the upper right corner with that brighter color. Pulling it back across. You can just see the very act of this being so multi-tonal and dimensional starts to age it. Wiped off my brush, grabbing some of my alizarin, coming back in. Had fun. Lots happening here. Now right under here, there would be absolutely a wonderful shadow. And I haven't rinsed off the alizarin crimson. I'm actually just going to come right over to my deep green. And you see when I add them together, how it deepens it. Get my glazing medium right here. Come right under my shadow box, my flower box, and start pulling in. A little water on there. Just a little bit now. We may come back with some stucco, and some of this may peek through, but we want to start this right now, aging this up. You can grab some of your ultramarine blue if you need to. You're creating a shadow. Start pulling that down. I find that, try to imagine that it's been watered here and is leaking down the wall season after season. So those are, you can see. And then it's dark right there. And the reason that it's dark right there is that the shadow would be underneath it. So I'm taking the ultramarine over to my burnt sienna. And still pulling that down. All right. See that here, just making sure I don't have any hard lines or edges. Scrumbling up, scrumbling down, scrumbling up, scrumbling down. So that's a little bit of a weight there, right? Rinse that off. One fun thing we can do while this is all finding its dry is to put in the basis of our bricks. So we got to put in our grout, our mortar. I'm going to grab my number 8 bright, get my burnt sienna and ultramarine together to make quite a dark gray. Put out more glazing if you need it. It's hot in my studio, so I'm feeling like I do. And so you're going to be deciding, is my grout light? Because if you think about it, sometimes when people are laying bricks, it's light, and sometimes it's quite dark. For this building, I decided on a lighter grout. So I will be adding a little white to this mixture. And I'm going to make some patches of bricks. So I'm going to be brushing back and forth. Here I am in the midsection of the canvas. I'm going to be going back and forth, creating a patch of bricks that will show. So I was asked when I was doing the demo when the stucco was laid versus the bricks. And the stucco has to be laid on top of something. So bricks will be done before the stucco. And then if, the building goes through some things, see some hard times. In Europe, when I was there, you would see buildings that had survived 2 wars. Possibly more. The city of Carcassonne had survived many, many wars. So, like from Charlemagne. So that goes back a bit. So you might have several applications of treatments on a wall, and then as they go through these traumas, those treatments will fall off. The bricks have to go on first to show the substructure of this wall. And I'm just creating a random area, you can see, that I can apply bricks to that are going to be peeking through the stucco. I'm going to put another little bit in this corner here. Now later, if I add the vine, if you choose to add the vine and all the flowers in part 2, which you can do. This is beautiful and wonderful finished as it is at the end of part 1, but there's an optional part 2 that you can do. You can find more out about part 2, or the Big Art Quest or any of that at TheArtSherpa.com. Here's another little spot that I'm going to have bricks. These little bricks are going to be peeking through. A little spot here. Maybe a little spot here. It might be nice if the spot kind of maybe tapered down, so I might make a little uneven shape coming down for bricks. Bricks here, bricks there. Now I think we need a little bit of brick around here, don't we? Bricky brick. We know how to make gray. So I'm going to put my grout in a little bit above my window. And I'm going to keep just painting this down. You know, sometimes when I'm painting, what's nice when I hear directly from you guys, when you tell me your questions or thoughts on a painting, I might not see it from your perspective. I see it from mine of being here at the easel, painting this in. But when I hear directly from you about questions you might have about the creative process or a particular painting, you could have insights. All right, so we've got that corner there. It's not hard. It seems even a little messy. You're like, how is that going to be wonderful bricks? And yet, when the layers go on each other and on top of each other, the painting will take on such a depth and such a character, and you're going to love it. And I have to tell you, even when I finish this, I feel such a painter's high, like just a joy of accomplishment. And I really want that joy of accomplishment for you too, which is why I go to the trouble of trying to explain all these little micro steps, even within the paintings, the best possible chance to get through. I think it's important to do that if you can. All right, so I'm pulling out the burnt. And I'm going to come down here. When I said burnt, I meant burnt sienna. Sometimes we get a little shortened in our practices. Now again, this is one of those great places where I could flip the canvas to create ease for myself. And that's always okay to do. Sometimes we forget to do that. You know, sometimes people ask me if they should paint the edges of a canvas like this. And what I would say is if this was a very thick, if the stretchers here were very thick, I would definitely 100% paint those. But because this is such a complicated, involved, and beautiful piece, I would highly suggest that you consider framing. Just something to think about when you're thinking about what you want to do with your piece. All right, that's doing pretty good. Lots happening in a painting like this, isn't there? There's a lot going on. Now another thing I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to age around my door. Right? Dirt's collecting there, rain's falling there, things are happening. So I might take a little of my alizarin crimson over to my dark green, which in this case is hooker's green. Where did I put my little tube? It's always fun to look through your tubes to look for the color that you need. The color that you need that might be interesting that you need it. Now I'm going to come around my door with this mix of alizarin and just come around a little bit. Like that. So cadmium red is a warm red and alizarin crimson is a cool red, and it can be very nice to have both a cool and a warm red or yellow or blue on your palette. Gives you a lot of choices to how you can express the distance something is from you, whether it's calming or exciting. So I'm just aging that. When we do the second part with the stucco, you can age that further. Let's get this to the first part of the aging here. Let's come here and get this to the first part. Pretty exciting stuff. Pretty fun. All right. Take this between these two, maybe a little more. You can pull this up a little bit around the steps. Go ahead and patina around the steps. I always think that's a good idea. You continue to patina around maybe this side of the steps, just to give it a little extra character, a little extra weight. Okay. All right. Maybe I need to age a little more there, so that would be a little more crimson, alizarin crimson, into my green, darkening it. Interesting how this is so much like the color of moss, and that the way the yellow glows through as it peeks through. And little bits of it will peek through the whole painting, which is kind of lovely. You know, you can also kind of go around your little, here, just a little bit. We're going to be putting a yellow sill there. This isn't going to hurt you right now. Just aging in here. Isn't that fun? So hopefully you're starting to see that this is about creating that history. And the way we create history, soften the edges between these two, is these layers. I'm going to do something about these steps, because I need these steps to have been walked on, don't you? Need the steps to have been walked on? Now I'm going to pull a smaller little brush out, and I'm really going to layer the steps. Like if you felt you'd been through the layering before, the steps have been painted and peeled, snowed on and chipped. Boots have been kicked into them. Things have happened. And I'm wondering, have you been outside a house in your life or on a street or on vacation where you saw a building where just by looking at it you got the sense that this building had stood a very long time, that lives had been lived here, that weddings and deaths and babies had been born, and parties had been thrown, and books had been read, and stories been told, and dinners, and I know I go on, but I've just stood outside doors like this and looked at these buildings and said, life. The full gamut of life has been lived inside here, and that's pretty extraordinary. That's pretty amazing. Let's keep soldiering on and finish this great blue door. The next thing I want to start working on is going inside the door, weathering it up, defining the wood, and also defining the stucco around here. So I'm going to get a very special tool out. I'm going to get my T-square, and I'm going to give myself some guidelines for my boards so I can put those in. I'm going to want at least one board here kind of centered. I'm going to come back once I get these put in the way I like them with dark paint. I'm imagining a kind of 6-inch plank that the board was built off of. You can see the T-square really helps me hold my line. Might move that over. Kind of do some adjustments here as I go. This is an inexpensive T-square. This doesn't, have to be the greatest precision instrument in the world. It's just to help you. I've done this using the edge of a paper towel too, though. So just anything that helps you keep your lines straight will help you do this. trick. Now flip it over. This just helps me make sure what I have going on makes any sense at all to the eye. Maybe put this over a little bit. I think this board needs the adjustment. So that's what this is for, is before I put it in paint and then have to erase my paint line, put it in chalk. Gives me a hand here. Now the trick with the paint line, I'm going to put out some of this fluid paint. This is black fluid. Little tip, if you can't get a soft-bodied acrylic or high-quality fluid paint, craft paints are soft-bodied as well. I'm going to come right here with my... These end up... the other reason I get inexpensive versions of these is because I get a lot of paint on them over time. And since that's going to happen, I'm going to actually switch to a longer ruler so I can get my whole line. It doesn't have the convenience of the see-through factor, which is nice when you're painting on a canvas, but it'll get me where I'm going and it'll give me an edge. That's what I'm looking for, is just sort of a nice straight edge. If I tried to freehand this, it would be very wonky. You can see I had a little thing there, but it doesn't matter. I'm painting over this whole area. I don't have to worry about it. Because this is very rustic and old world looking, I can allow some things to be loose or silly in some way. Got some paint on my finger and still be able to do this. Alright, we're almost there. You can see, not intense. I'm just using this. This is a 3/8 angle brush, but really why I'm choosing it is going to give me a nice line and brush along my door well. That's really what I want. Rinse that brush out. Put my ruler down to recover. I'm going to get a nice number 4 stiff bristle bright here and start working in this door. And so one of the first things I'm going to start working in about the door is the sort of shadow that's up top. I'm going to get a little of my ultramarine blue and my alizerine crimson. I'm going to work this down. My black paint underneath is dry and the glazing is letting me tint over the door very easily. And as I go, I'm going to really want this shadow. There's a lot of layers on this door. There's a lot of layers in the base part of this painting. But just because something has a lot of layers doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that you've just got to prepare for the fact that you're going to be painting on it a little bit. That's okay. If you like what you're painting, you won't mind. Just pulling this up here because you know at this kick plate, at this part of the door, that there would absolutely get some glazing. We may even shadow it more. We may even talk about it more. The more you talk about or paint on an area, the more you'll get a feel for it. Sometimes you can overwork a painting, and that's part of the fun of becoming an artist, is figuring out where that balance is. When am I overworking it? When am I getting right to where I need to? Alright. We're going to start. We're going to pull some of this ultramarine blue out. Now I'm going to get just a corner because I want very little of this CAD. Just this corner. And it's going to deepen my blue a bit, gray it a bit, but not too much. And I'm going to come between these boards, dry brushing and scrumbling this next value of blue, starting to weather the wood. Small amount of CAD. Too much and you're going to lose the blue. Too little, when you use the bright blue, it won't pop. And you're going to want it to pop. See how it's just this dry scrumble brush. That's why I like this brush I'm working with right here, because it lets me dry scrumble really easily. You could do burnt sienna in the ultramarine blue as well. You see, I'm not trying to paint out everything that's underneath it. I worked hard for that color, and I'm leaving a lot of it in. Every layer, whoa, got crazy there with the CAD red. See that? That's right, I just wiped it out. Went and got the blue. See, I sort of, it's kind of like when you scrape off the bottom of your shoe if you get something unpleasant on it. Real similar thing that I might do on a canvas. That one was a little more purple than what was before. That's okay. I'm still aging my wood. Now I'm going to take this extra CAD red that I pulled out in my blue. I'm going to add a little white to this, and you're going to see that it gets me kind of a gray. And I'm going to come rough up again, another layer, letting things show through underneath, scrumbling around this door. And you think to yourself, oh, there's a lot going on in this door. And there is a lot going on in this door. But the important thing for you to know is everything that we have going on in this door, you can handle. You can do it. All right. Just, you know, I am not painting out my black lines, but you can see how they just create that depth. It tells us that there's planks. I'm going to need an even darker shadow a little bit later here and here, but right, it's just about the layers. Just about the layers. Working that out, scrubbling. That's what you're doing. It doesn't take a lot if you understand what your goal is. Now I'm going to pull out some blue, and you'll notice I haven't, not only have I not rinsed my brush, but I've not added any water or medium. And I'm going to, as lightly as I can, just come up the door and let some of this blue come off my brush. This is the where I'm talking about the paint chipping and, you know, the door is aging and things are afoot. We haven't even put on the fabulous hardware. It's all so interesting, this doorway. And you can create all kinds of adventures. Even if you're homebound, even if you can't get out, you can let your mind get out. Right? You can let your mind wander and go to these fabulous places. Paint better than real life mysterious doors to homes with history. Just dry brushing it. You can just see I'm just letting the blue skip over, and this bright blue really pops. It really says I'm a blue door. But you don't want to use so much of it that you lose all the character that the blue door has. And we still haven't even done the last layer on aging the wood. Aren't we crazy? Aren't we funny? But you got to keep going. Art and life are like that. You just got to keep going. Don't give up. Don't surrender. Don't surrender to your painting, and don't surrender to your life. Just keep going. I've added a little cad red here, and I'm going to get quite a lot of white. The brush is still very, very dry. I'm going to, this is sort of on the edge of my brush. I'm going to dance a little more weathering over the top here. This is the highlight weathering. Just brushing it softly. Just doing that. It's a very requested lesson. So I'm hoping a lot of people will enjoy doing it. If you want to see more about these techniques or anything in this lesson, I totally want to suggest that you go check out TheArtSherpa.com for more information about painting, how to take this painting even further than the stucco, and fun things that you can be doing in your art starting today. I'm going to just keep adding this gray. It's so strange how it adds to the door, doesn't it? The door is getting older and older with each layer of paint. If you feel anywhere you lost too much blue, it's so simple. Just go back and touch it up. You know, because this is your blue door. This isn't your dim door. This is a blue door. Now while this is drying, so I can put the last glaze and start putting the hardware, let's think about the steps a little bit. I'm going to rinse out my brush. I'm going to want to have lots of character, lots of weathering, and I want to make sure that the top of my steps is lighter and the front of my steps is in shadow to give it some illusion of shape and depth. So I'm going to take a little of my yellow oxide and I'm going to grab some of my ultramarine blue. You can even get a little of your burnt sienna in there if you need to. And let's get some white. Come along this step. Very dry brush. Everything is dry brush again and again and again. You'll notice that the dry brush. Pulling out some more. Just letting it age up. It's okay to get a little of the blue, the ultramarine blue, and the burnt here and create this sort of deeper gray. Keep aging it. Old steps. Stuff's happening. Stuff's happening here. Gotta weather it up. If not you, then who? Pull some more white into that. Maybe a little more blue. Just brushing on the edge here, pulling it down. Grabbing some here. Pulling out a little more oxide, coming to the edge of the step, making sure that it is resolved and thought about. Get glazing medium if you need to. Coming back into the white. I'm going to rinse off my brush a little bit and start working the dark values. So I'm going to grab a little bit of the burnt sienna and the ultramarine blue. Make sure my brush is pretty dry though from the rinse out. I'm going to come along this bottom, getting things that need to be out of my way, and I'm going to just start pulling in the shadow. Start pulling in the shadow. Definitely put a little of this out because I can pull this in as well. This will be helpful. So I just put out some Hooker's Green, which was on there previously, but when I reset the palette, I forgot to put it out. But it is a color I'm going to need all the way to the end of this painting. I'm going to keep defining my steps with this darker value, which is really fun. Taking this burnt sienna and this ultramarine too, to do that. I also want to make a very dark shadow under the door, I feel. So that'll be something I'm also doing. It will be something I'm also doing. Sorry. Sometimes you just have a song in your heart. I'm going to just pull this out just a little bit, like there's just some sort of shadow. If I need to, I'll grab... I don't like to use too much black, but right here is a good place to put it. So I have that on my brush already, and I'm going to get a little of the alizarin crimson on there. Maybe a smidge of white. And I'm going to continue to age these steps. Just age them up, make mold. Oh, I'm going to get one of my favorite colors, the nickel azo. It just goes muddy yet not muddy. It's incredible. And gives me a warm brown to play with. I'm going to wipe my brush. I'm going to come get a little of this green mixed with the nickel azo. And just add just that hue. Grab the, push your pigment out. This is a thing that I do. I have pigment from here and I'll push my pigment out into the yellow oxide. Alright, so this is really coming together quite well. I'm going to take my glazing, just make sure that everything is patinaed. I'm just taking some of this color with the glaze on the top. Isn't that interesting? How you can do that. This is why glazing is wonderful, because it's another way of blending in acrylic painting. There's several methods of creating blends or subtle value changes. Glazing medium, especially the liquid glazing medium that's both a retarder and a glaze, is just a fabulous treat. Alright, let's start thinking about what's happening here. shall we? We should get our square out again. And I'm going to make a level line about midway on the door that I'm just going to know is here. I'm going to do it with this brown watercolor pencil. And then I'm also going to make one in the center here. And then at these curves, I'm going to put in exact opposite spots this mason line here. And if you want to check that you've got it in the right place, you can just take the ruler and just make sure that they're starting off from the same spot here. So there we go, we've got that in. I've got my scrumbly brush. And I'm going to start getting into this azo, maybe a little bit of my cad yellow, adding a little white to it. And I'm going to just start brightening and aging up this old masonry that I imagined would be here. Now I'm going to leave the mark that I had, because that's going to really help give my door some substance. And you can see this is great to get this next layer of paint on here. Sometimes you will see artists, you can't really say that you see all artists anything. What's wonderful about being an artist is that there's a lot of ways of doing it. You know, there's a lot of styles of art and there's a lot of ways of painting. So some artists might do it different, but many artists will not rinse their brushes as often, so that there's sort of this paint to paint to paint continuity. I like that quite a lot myself. The danger of it is it can get muddy, but the benefit is it's very unifying. So you just always, in everything in art, just sort of look at how does it help you do your goal. Just here on my number 4 bright. Happily I'm going to get some more of this rust and come around this edge here. I'm just making sure that everything is looking good. Now I might get some just this azo here. And this is sort of interesting. I'm gonna, not everywhere, just scrumbly dash some space here on the door. I've got time, you've got time. We're not closing. I'm asking everyone to leave. There's time to complete the piece. If you need some glazing medium, by all means, get into it. Just keep adding this delicious color. Where there's some right here at the top of this, coming out to the outer left, coming down. Definitely we'll have this be where this hits the step of very deep value, so we'll keep defining that throughout this piece. Just running here. Something you can do is to pull this nickel Easel into your alizerine crimson. Interestingly enough, and then grab a little ultramarine. Makes a very interesting dark color, and you can come along the inside of your door. You can define the beginning of this. There'll be actually a lighter line inside of it. It's a great beginning definition. Just pull this depth that you've created right here around, just on the edge, using the edges of your bristles. Now if you're brand new to painting, you haven't painted in a long time, This is a lot to take on. But you can get here. You can absolutely get here. I don't actually ascribe to the talent notion. I understand talent exists. There are people who have a natural acuity to something. But in art, more often than not, it is perseverance and determination that gets us where we're going. And I haven't really had the experience where I've seen someone really try and not give up where they didn't get further than they thought was possible. So you can probably do more than you know. It's important to be optimistic about your potential. Sometimes that involves not letting the negative people that you know are going to just have to poo-hoo your efforts be involved just yet. Maybe your art practice is a private thing. I am going to, haven't even rinsed my brush, I'm going to pull out a little of my burnt sienna and again my ultramarine. I might need some glazing liquid. I'm going to come to the outside of my door. And start weighing in this shadow. Just pull it out. It's great how the layers of it just build on each other, creating more character. You can see me pulling this out here where I'm brushing out right, down, right. Scrumble. You know, and that's what you've got to do. Going, feathering this here. You can see me working the brush on the tips of its bristles, pulling this up. We can add some of this value here, aren't we? Some age. Some front stoop has been washed. That's what you want to do. I'm going to rinse out. I'm going to keep brightening this up. May come age that too, though. Let's brighten this up a bit and then we'll come back and age. So one thing I can do is I can grab my yellow ochre, my cad yellow, and mix them together. I'm going to just start making little soft, opened brush strokes. Defining the patina of this. We may have to come back with a graying. We're trying to say that this is old and yellow, and old and yellow can be interestingly a challenge. Because things that are yellow tend to not feel old, they tend to feel bright and new. I'm just keeping my brush pressure as light as I can as I'm doing this. And so if I'm trying to tell the story of this being kind of this marigold against this blue, it's gonna be important that I fight, well, I don't want to say fight, but I continue to persevere in my painting. You know, that I continue to be present in my painting. To age it. And I'm just coming along here. Not too much though, right? Very see-through. Now we can gray this a bit if I bring a little of the alizerine over. See, it gets orange, but if I bring a little of the blue, we get this kind of grayed feeling, don't we? So let's add some of that around, little bits of that. It's subtle, but it'll make a difference. And you're going to be here just like with the door. You know, don't expect the passage of centuries in your painting, you know, to necessarily paint quick. You know, a lot of people ask me, how long should this take? And I can tell you from a lot of experience that nobody has a set time. There isn't like a goal time that we're aspiring for. You can see I was going alizarin and then to the ultramarine and then back to the cad, and then I'll get a little white here. The interesting skin tone I just made too. So you see these things and you might remember a mix for later for another project. Yeah, we don't, there's no time space that you're trying to get into. I'm going to get a smaller brush as if that's possible, but I am. Where did they go? There they are. This is a number 2 bright, and I really adore the size number 2. I think it's a great bright. Good time to hydrate if you need to, or coffee up as I need to. I love the holiday coffee flavors. They're so yummy. I'm going to come over and get in my white and come over to my yellow, and I'm going to make this very light color. You can see here. I'm going to start, I'd actually even put some of this between here. These are going to be very little. It's not going to be a lot. Coming along the top. Just a little edge here. Just patina the wall. Wax on, wax off. Patina the wall. Give it some character. Give it a little depth. It's important. Please, just a little depth. Just keep defining and giving depth. Right here, make sure you have that there. A little more white into that. And just soft pressure. Just take your time into this. You build up. You build up. If it doesn't work for you, you can come back. You can come back and say, this isn't working. I don't like what's happening. You can come and say, all right, I want some of this yellow oxide. You can come back in and add some spots of that. And you can see that as you keep going around this door, things get older and they get more substantial. And maybe we'll add a little, just a smidge of alizarin crimson. Warm that up. And just put that around. Just keep doing that. And then what's real fun is I'm going to get a little of my burnt sienna and my alizarin crimson. And come on either side. It's here. Maybe even pull it out a bit. Just keep going. Keep pulling those together. Get a little glaze if you need to. There you go. Aging around your door. Just enjoy the contrast and the way they play against each other. Just pulling this down. I'm going to come through here. I'm going to pull just a little, make sure my brush is dry. It was a little wet there, so I wiped it off on my towel. Just a little bit of this CAD, not a ton. Too much would just overwhelm the piece. Just overwhelm it. All right, that's looking pretty sharp. Now, one of the things that I can do is I can get my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna. Have some red still in there, so it's going quite gray on me. I mean, yellow in there. Yellow, that's yellow. I'm just going to keep mixing it down because what I essentially want is right here, very dark value that I'm going to pull down. Just adding a little glazing. This is that aging. Now you know what it takes. All right. Ooh, sippy sippy. How you feeling? Deep breath. It's a big project, but big doesn't mean it can't be done. Big just means that you've got more layers, and you can layer. You can do this. You can absolutely do this. Let's let the door rest and the jamb rest for a minute and work on our window and maybe wander into our bricks. So I know I'm going to want to have like panes here, and I'm going to want to have dividers. So there's a lot of ways that I can do that. I think for me, because if measuring helps you, right? So measuring does not always help me. Because I would be inclined to do that here, but it looks like it's right here. Put the halfway mark in. But what you want is in the halfway mark, you want to make a mark. That was beautifully explained. In the halfway mark. You may need to adjust. Right. And then go ahead and just test dividing your window up with window panes. See if you like your division. Because when it's in the chalk, it's super easy to change or fix or alter. So whatever you like or don't like, you can easily resolve. Now, you can do painter's tape like this. Quick trick is that if you can't get painter's tape, which is a low tack tape, really that's what we're talking about, it's just a low tack tape. Sometimes when you put them on your canvas and you push them down, they're going to lift up the paint underneath it, especially if you're painting something less robust. And so it can be a good idea. I've got my number 4 bright here, and I'm just getting a little of my nickel Easel and a little of my cad yellow, just having a blast, and I'm going to just maybe add a little white to it, maybe a little burnt sienna. I just want a dark base. Take it to the window pane, just brush it up to the top. Now once I have that, I can get a little of my white and a little of my yellow, and I'm going to just carefully dab a little of this highlight mixture on there. When I pull that off, it's a very painterly paint. Now I obviously can't put tape right back on, so my trick is to dry it with my hair dryer and then tape it again. So if you want to be frugal, you can reuse tape. That is possible. I'm using, you know, again, this is specifically artist tapes for paintings, you know. So I thought it was going to be even more frugal and divide it in half. Looks like I got some genetic evidence in there. I got my hair in there. Whenever you accidentally paint one of your hairs into a painting, I like to say it's genetic evidence. Because if you were, you know, the next great painter, future generations would be so glad that you left some hair in there. I don't think that's me, but it could be you. We'll have to see. So I am leaving these open, and I'm going to do the same thing I did before. A little of my burnt over to my nickel Easel with a little of my cad red. Get that nice color in there. Just paint some crossbars. They're almost orange. If you need some white for coverage, white always improves that. Come here. Fun stuff, this. Hopefully. Hopefully this is fun stuff. I think it's fun to paint. I think it's very fun to paint. Now that I have those in, I will go back and get that white and that cad yellow like we did before. And just, you can just see I'm just very lightly not painting out what's underneath. I always leave a little bit of what's underneath. This is allowing the paint to work for me instead of me working for the paint. I'm going to tear it off. If you didn't burnish it down well enough, you can get little kind of leaks underneath, but that's always really correctable with your paint. In fact, I'm going to mix some of my ultramarine blue and my burnt sienna to a very dark color, add some glazing liquid to it, and I'm going to come and darken not all of my paint area, but definitely up here. Just darkening it. I just need it to be, maybe add a little bit of my alizerine crimson to this mix. And a little more ultramarine blue. I want it to be quite dark. Put some character up there. Just taking these brush marks down, straight up and down. Not painting out everything underneath. And then when I have that, then I can grab a little of my white, add it to that mixture, and just very lightly add some reflections in the window. That'll help our window feel just a little more real, a little more resolved. You can do the yellow painting around your window, and I'm going to do this with just my brush. I'm going to get that first mixture I had, which was the burnt sienna, the azo, and the cad, and a little white. And I'm going to just come over the top and use the width of my brush only. See, this is a number 4 bright, so it's like a width I like. I'm going to do this with my bricks too. If it's a width you like, sometimes your brush can create the dividing lines that you're looking for. And then I'm going to just come on the edge here. Just come along the edge to work the outer pane. And you can tape if you want to. That's all acceptable. I'm going to get a little of my yellow, having rinsed my brush, a little of my white. And just dry brush over the top. That's all that took. Now, for your bricks, it really depends on the steadiness of your hand. So I'm going to start my bricks right here, and I want my bricks to be about the width of my brush, and I'll use a light white chalk. Now I'm going to start there, and my initial start of my bricks is going to be a little alizarin crimson, a little burnt sienna, a little ultramarine blue. You'll notice that we use this mix a lot in the painting. But it's a very good neutralizing mix. I like it. And we're going to do it. And so how I'm going to do my bricks is I'm going to go brick, 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 brick. I'll take the bricks to there. So once I have that layer for me, keep adding this darker color. Put this stabby thing out of the way. And what I can do here is go brick, brick. You can see I'm doing the spacing between the break. These are very rustic bricks. And what that's going to end up meaning is they don't all have to be exactly the same color. If I were to grab a little, believe it or not, yellow oxide, I can keep adding these bricks. I'm just trying to create this pattern that will be peeking through the stucco. Peeking through. Let's grab a little burnt sienna, a little ultramarine blue, a little alizarin. And I can just use my brush to imply bricks. A lot of this is going to be covered. Now I can take my nickel Easel, my alizarin crimson, and just a little of my yellow oxide here. And my other trick I'm going to do is I'm going to come down with a little around, not everywhere, not all the same, a downward stroke with some different streaky values into my bricks. Might add a little white to this. Come back. Put some other values on these bricks. Starts to just tell old story of masonry. Maybe I'll grab a little yellow, mix that in. And you can see that as you mix in these different colors and values, placing them around, you get this distinctive, colorful, warm brick feel. Let's make another little line we can follow here. And if you need to, you can always flip it over. Shockingly, totally works. All right, I'm going to create another little line that I can follow. Follow, 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 follow this weird little chalk line we're going to put down. You can do it. Just helps me. You may not need it. I definitely do. I definitely do. I'm just putting the paint out. So brick, 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 brick. Might put a brick here. Keep mixing up some bricks. Brick it, brick. All in all, it's just a, you know what? Don't you? Don't you know what? There we go, little bricks there. And what do we know we can do? We can get some azo and a little yellow, and we just mix these little colors. I might switch it over so that the streaking all runs the same way. We don't want to mess that up. Put white on there. And a lot of these don't, the reason I'm not having you just really work so hard on your bricks is frankly, you're going to paint out a lot of them. A lot of it's going to get painted out. So you can always go back and refine as you're resolving the painting for the second stage of it after the stucco is dried. However, you may find that you're really happy with how things are. Now, I do want to make sure that my brick lines line up from this side to this side. That will be an area that is important. So I'm going to just make sure that these line up. I might even do this. Just making sure. Okay. Mixing up my color. There we go. It's a subtle thing, but you will want it. Get the ultramarine into the burnt sienna with the alizerine. All right. Glazing. Maybe add a little yellow, graze it out. I'm just working my brick pattern. It's not crazy, it's not too tight. You can do this very precise. And if that is your temperament, don't feel like that's wrong. Put out some nickel azo. I'm out of some colors, if you'll notice, as I'm going along. It's quite lovely to put out paint colors and then be running out of them. Maybe I'll get my brush, I'll just wipe it off a little bit, grab a little of this yellow ochre and a little of my nickel azo and some white. And let's add some character to my bricks. We don't want every brick to be the same. So be sure and change up your character. But again, painting over a lot of this, so don't make yourself miserable. Last bunch of bricks. Last bunch of bricks. This is looking pretty good. You doing okay? Deep breath. Again, you may want to line up some bricks from the bottom. Just a little bit. Lining them up. Oh, nope, we don't have any. We don't have to worry about it. We can line up some bricks to this. There we go. Got my one line. And, oh, I should put out some more ultramarine. Got my big tube. I like it when I can get the colors in big tubes. You know you can get these like in a gallon. It's like crazy. You can get huge sizes of these. That is not an exact measurement of size that you could get. I'm just saying, I've seen some big sizes of paint that you can get. But I think you'd have to really be painting a lot to do that. Otherwise it would not be used quickly enough. There was a time when I think I painted quickly enough to get the mega size. Well, painting a lot now, I maybe need to revisit that idea. So I'm just dashing along, having fun, painting bricks. You'll just see I'm not stressed over it at all. Every once in a while I'm adding glaze so I have better fluidity off my brush because I don't want it to be that much. I want it a little dry, but not as dry as it's been getting. Not as dry as it has been. We're just kind of implying some bricks happening down there. A little of the alizerine crimson and the nickel azo, some white, and let's give our brick some character. I like giving them character. It really helps when they peek through the stucco too. This feeling of some of this gray character to it. So you can just really change it up. And you can spend as much time with your bricks as you like. As you need. As you want. Wow, there you go. So this is a great time to really look at everything and examine everything and make sure it's pleasing to you, that you're enjoying how it looks. We're going to put in some hardware on the door, and then we're going to do the really fun stucco part, which is one of my favorite parts to do. All right, so let's get our little T-square out and let's put some hardware here. I don't want to put it in the paint where I just painted, because that would be annoying. And we'll put a bit of hardware above this joint and below this joint. And actually, I can just get right into my angle again that I have out, and I'm going to make a line with my black paint. If my brush will get dry enough. Now I'm going to take it to about this part of the door, which is for me 1, 2, 3, 4 over. Wipe this off so I'm not dragging paint all over my canvas. Carefully place this down and put in another ancient joint. Ancient joints are fun to paint, and it should be about the same length as its friend. So that's nice and straight. I'm going to find my number 2, and I'm going to paint this in a little more, and maybe a doorknob, and then I'll show you how to do the bolts up here. So I'm going to take the number 2, and I'm going to just use the width of the brush to help me. So this is hand pounded metal. If it helps you to imagine what you're painting, it does sometimes help me. And it's got this sort of traditional pattern on it, which is sort of fun. I looked at a lot of old doors to get a sense of the different ways that people enjoyed themselves embellishing their door. When I have that in, I'm going to grab a detail brush. A detail. A couple details down here. This is a nice micron mini, an ultra mini, and they are really helpful. I'm going to load a bit onto the tip. And here, I'm going to draw a little line going out. It's kind of like a little flourish. I'm going to do the same on its friend. I'll come back with a bigger brush. I need to finish this to the end. These are the same, and that's what always gets me. I don't know if that's a thing that gets you in your paintings, but when you've got to do matchies, it's always an extra challenge. It's always an extra challenge. I find that doing matchies is more helpful. I'm going to come back on board, and I'm going to curve this out and curve that out into a fork. This out and that out. And then I'm going to do the opposite. And a little bit wider than the first curve. So that's how I get the door ornamentation. A little bit wider than the first curve. Now, coming right here in the center between these two, and I think I'll put it right here in this plank. I'm going to draw a circle, and that's going to be the old knob. I can even do this little twirly effect and get it painted in. And then we're going to do, in each door at the top here, we're going to do a bolt. There, start with a black dot. These are hand-pounded, handmade bolts. That's what you're doing. This door is going to withstand a siege. You're not just coming in here. You're not. You're not just walking in. You better knock. Because that's the only way you're getting in this door. You need to be invited. I'm going to wipe that off and reload. Alright, coming. There we go. Okay, so we have that basis in. I'm going to rinse. It's very important to take care of these miniature brushes and make sure that you've worked all the paint out. You can see I'm just pulling it right out with even, I don't want any up in the ferrule. I'm going to wipe it out, and I'll still wash it after this is all over. I just want to make sure there's none just sitting in there, because these will blow out the quickest of your brushes. I'm getting a small brush that's trying to escape me. This fun little guy is a number 2 bright with a short handle. It's a wonderful detail brush. And it's going to help me finish out my hardware. The width of the brush is really helping me here. Just build that out. Gonna just build it out. Building it out. Yeah, that's fun to do. And then we're going to start aging this. So one thing we can do is we can take out a little of this black and get some of this nickel azo and pull it in. And then some white. Just graze it out. Let's take this sort of brownish gray. It's quite warm. And very lightly dry brush over the top. You might even need it to be even a little lighter than what I have there. Can you see the yellow in that gray? This is a dry brush. Start to see this door come to life. Start to see it. Go ahead and I'll do some of the doorknob there. Down here, have fun. Make sure you have fun. Pulling it out, pulling it down. Now I'm going to get a lot more white on that brush. I might even get a little more my nickel azo. I want a much lighter color. Couple places, not a lot. If I overdo, it will take away the effect that I'm looking to create. Might grab some of this and just make sure that some of my doorknobs have a little highlight. See the little highlight on the doorknob? Isn't that nice? Little highlight. Come and get a little more white on your brush. Make another one. 2 highlights. It really starts to be these hand pounded bits. Now, got a little of my Azo and a lot of my white right there, and let's get some more Azo. You want to really kind of, there we go. There, some rust has come on there, hasn't it? We want some of that there. There you go. You've got that going. The trick is, though, they're kind of floating there, aren't they? They don't feel like they live there yet. So how I'm going to make these feel like they live there is I'm going to weather underneath them. I'm going to take my nickel Azo. I'm going to come underneath, pull as if water and rain has rusted down the door. See it going? And all of a sudden, if you need to, grab a little of the black. Come here. Pull it down. Age that door. Underneath this doorknob, pull it down. Get some of this. And then you can even, and this may feel crazy, get some white into that. A little yellow. Glaze. Look at that. Aged, aged, aged. And I like to even take a little of this and put it around my steps. I'm always looking for places that I might enjoy sticking some color. It doesn't make me feel resolved in my painting. Now let's set up for our stucco. I'm going to show you how to do that, and we're going to apply the stucco. Here's what I have to say about stucco, and this is the must know about stucco. It must dry overnight. I'm using this specific medium because the specific medium does a particular job exceedingly well, and that's why I'm recommending it. I'm going to show you how it's done. If you'd like to see more information about mediums like this, you can join our Big Art Quest, and you can learn about the Big Art Quest at TheArtSherpa.com. I'm going to go get myself set up, and through the magic of video, it will totally just appear. So this is the stucco. This is exactly what I use, and I use this for very specific reasons. It is very absorbent. So not only can I tint it now, but when it's dry, I can do washes and kind of a watercolor aging effect where the pigment will bleed in, and yet it won't underbind. And that's going to be really critical to part 2. But for part 1, we've got to get this fluffy awesomeness out. I'm using a palette knife to take it out. You could use any kind of a knife if you wanted to. This is just a little plastic one. Just putting out some so you can kind of see it. Putting that back on. It's very important to get the jar back on. This is super messy stuff, but it's a lot of fun. I'm going to start out using a multi-angle palette knife. You could also use a really good diamond knife. I'm going to pull some out here, add a little white pigment to it, and then I'm going to add just a bit of this yellow ochre, and to give it a little character, some nickel Azo. So this is how I'm going to start my wall aging, and I'm going to come along here. The stucco is loaded to the left side of my palette. It's in sort of a frosting style bead. This is not dissimilar from frosting a cake, I must say. I'm going to very lightly drag my tool over the wall. If I need to load up a new bead, I will. See, I've just loaded a new bead. I'm letting the wall I just painted in show through underneath. This part is really fun for me. Hopefully it'll be fun for you. You can kind of see the bricks. You can see when I need to reload, I press down, I scrape along the edge, and it reloads it. I try not to overmix it because I really want it to be streaky, and I really want it to do these grabby dot effects that you can see happening on my canvas. Now at the end of this, you could just be done with what we painted today. Or you could plant this window box and add flowers and vines. And both of these choices are perfectly good. You can take this door through seasons. Push out some white and some ochre and a little nickel azo and press that into my stucco. I don't want to mix it too uniformly. Having some fun. Hopefully you're having some fun. If you need to turn your canvas, you can to get a better handle on it. Your goal is, as I'm coming up here, just adding little bits of stucco along my wall, is to create the feeling of a wall that has started to fall apart. And who's to say, right? So I come here and I mix and come along the top, pulling down. I'm just going to pull this down. Just letting the paint tell that story. Isn't that fun? If any place you want to have more stucco, you just apply it. I'm just scraping off the extra there and then having an imaginative moment. I'm going to come over here, just work the top of my wall a little bit. Loading up. And you'll notice I just keep loading. I load the bead the direction I'm going to be dragging it. Put a little more yellow oxide. Maybe a little more white. I think we're doing okay on nickel azo, and we're almost done. Pretty exciting, except for the drying time, which is not optional. It is a must dry time. I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna pull down some more old wall. Just pull it down. I like to allow it to break open like that. Really can't get it wrong. I'm gonna not get too crazy here because I know in my second part I'm gonna want to put a vine. Or maybe you're like, no, this right here, this is my perfect. I don't want it overgrown with a bunch of stuff. I don't want a bunch of flowers. That's not my walkway. And it is always okay So I come down here, I'm going to just break this up and make sure it's bricks peeking out. That's what I'm wanting to do. Bricks peeking out. Come down here in the corner, and more bricks peeking out. Yes, you can varnish. I would recommend, my opinion, is a spray varnish for anything with just a ton of texture to it, like this has. Moving this on the edge and just pulling this out. Just, you know, put it where you feel like you need it. Put it anywhere. You can also go back and put it over itself. That's what you can do. You can do that. Oh my goodness. You know what time it is? It's dry time, which is really a great time. So give yourself a treat. This is quite an accomplishment. Pat yourself on the back. Anytime, especially when you're new to painting, that you take on a challenge and you face it straight on and you finish it, that is a win, right? And so if you're in a place where you're not really ready to hear other people's opinions on your win, go ahead and keep those wins to yourself until you're ready to show those to the world. Because I think you're going to find that as you're completing these pieces that you do get a lot of support around you and you do get a lot of people coming in and giving you thumbs up. But it's okay to take some time and just keep some of these accomplishments for yourself. So whether you want to share it on social media or you want to just gleefully look at it over your desk, both of those answers are always and totally, completely acceptable. Be good to yourselves. Take care of each other. See you soon.